Hey everybody, welcome to the Mana Leek. I'm John as always, and somehow it's already time for another set review. Core Set 2020 has been revealed today, and it's going to come out in pre-release over at twitch.tv/loadingreadyrun, where I will be a chat judge on this Friday, and then of course next Friday you'll be able to play it at your local game stores. For the first time ever, you can do it Friday, I believe morning, afternoon, evening. You don't have to wait until midnight, and I believe they're also allowed to do drafts as well. Make sure you come over to twitch.tv/themanaleak and check out the early access Wizards event that they've invited me to on July 1st. I'll be playing a whole bunch of Core Set 2020 there as well, including a little bit of draft. There's a few hours where we're going to be allowed to do that. But today, we're going to be taking a look at all of the white cards from a limited perspective. Keep in mind, this is a limited set review. We don't care how good these cards are going to be in Standard or Legacy or Tiny Leaders or Frontier or whatever you want to put those cards in. We're just talking about draft, and all of that advice typically applies to Sealed as well. Just imagine it's a little bit slower than draft. Keep in mind as well that these are my personal reviews. These are how I'm going to approach these cards at the start of the format. Your views might differ, and that's the beauty of set reviews. They encourage people to talk about this. So talk in the comments down below. Let me know what you agree with, disagree with, etc. Chat with me, chat with each other. And one final little note before we jump into this. Keep in mind the grades aren't really the thing that I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on the discussion about the cards. The grades are just sort of an end cap on the discussion to give sort of a focal point on it. But they don't super matter. I don't go super scientifically with this. They're not graded on a curve. A C+ or a B- is a very niggling little bit of different. So if you're gonna want to argue about me whether something's a C+ or a B-, it doesn't really matter. I'm here to talk about the cards and why they are good or why they are bad, rather than to just stab a grade on them and leave. Remember, tier lists don't work in Magic. But without further ado, we're going to jump on into the first card. Up first, we have Aerial Assault. Aerial Assault is 2 and a white for a sorcery at common. Destroy target tapped creature. You gain 1 life for each creature you control with flying. Not the biggest fan of this. We're paying an extra mana for Take Vengeance, which I believe was in M19. Yeah, it was in M19. It was the same card except for that gain a life stuff. And it was 1 and a white. This is not premium removal, just like Take Vengeance never was in all previous versions of the spell that we've seen. It's actually surprisingly hard to engineer the situation where your opponent has that tapped creature and you get to kill it. Because, of course, remember, the most common scenario is you took a bunch of damage off of that scary 7/6 zombie dinosaur or whatever in order to actually finally get around to killing it. It's still okay, and I'll play a copy of it if I have a spot, but it's very, very, very like middle of the pack for your pick order. It's just not a great card, and you don't want to load up on these. The gain a life for your flyers, I don't care. That's not worth an extra mana. So this is a C. It's not exciting. I'll play 1, but I will not typically play anymore. Up next, we're jumping right on into Planeswalkers. Planeswalkers are thankfully back at Mythic, except for a couple that we'll see in a few days. We've got Ajani, Strength of the Pride. Ajani, Strength of the Pride is 2 white for a legendary Planeswalker Ajani at Mythic. He starts with 5 loyalty. For +1, you gain life equal to the number of creatures you control plus the number of Planeswalkers you control, which is probably going to be 1, thankfully. -2 is create a 2/2 white cat soldier creature token named Ajani's Pridemate with, quote, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Ajani's Pridemate. It's literally the card Ajani's Pridemate. You are literally creating almost a copy of that card. It doesn't have the CMC that Ajani's Pridemate normally would, but yeah, you're just making Ajani's Pridemate. And his ultimate costs 0. If you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, exile Ajani's Strength of the Pride and each artifact and creature your opponent controls. 4 mana for 5 loyalty is always nice, but Ajani's first ability isn't that great. If you're gaining a ton of life, that means you're already way ahead. You have a bunch of creatures if you're gaining a bunch of life. So you're already ahead. It's just sort of gravy. And lifing up during a board stall doesn't do much, except using his ultimate, of course. Now, his plus, of course, synergizes with his minus. If you've made an Ajani's Pridemate or 2, and then you start gaining life, then they're going to start getting counters. But what we're talking about here is a very, very, very slow engine. It's going to take quite a bit of time for all of this grand plan to work out. And then his ultimate, I mean, I guess it's good if you're at 35 life. You get to break that board stall. I don't know. I'm not sold on a Johnny being like a slam dunk amazing planeswalker, which is great, I will say. I actually love the planeswalkers in this set. They're all a little bit narrow, and that's fantastic. That's the way that a really good core set should be. So I think a Johnny's fine. I think he is probably still just first pickable because it is 2 of Johnny's Pride Mates for the cost of 2 of Johnny's Pride Mates, right? And then as long as a Johnny lives, they do start getting bigger all in this one card. So it's still a fine, like A-, but it's not like a slam dunk, haha, you've won the game because you've drafted this card or anything. A- for a Johnny. Ancestral Blade is up next. Ancestral Blade is 1 and a white for an artifact equipment at uncommon. When Ancestral Blade enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, then attach Ancestral Blade to it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, equip cost of 1. I had to stop myself here because I immediately jumped to, oh, it's equipment, it's uncommon, it's bad. But this is just a 2/2 for 2 at the floor. And that's the absolute floor. These days, that's like a C-. There was a time where that used to be a C. Maybe in core set it is still sort of a C. But later in the game, you can move that sword when the 2/2 is no longer relevant. And hey, you've got a flyer that could really use a sword. You just pay 1 mana and move this aura, this counter, this equipment over to that flyer, and hey, that's a little bit of a bonus. It's not a huge bonus. It's still a bonus though. So I think this is actually sort of a C+, and I think I always play the first copy in various white creature-y decks. I'm not super excited by this or going out of the way. Ultimately, it is just going to be like an extra counter or something, except it's a counter that doesn't go away. Yeah, C+ for Ancestral Blade. It's better than you might immediately think if you just are like me and say, oh, it's equipment, it's bad. C+ for Ancestral Blade. Up next is Angel of Vitality. Angel of Vitality is 2 and a white for a creature angel at uncommon. She's a 2/2 flyer. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1. Instead, Angel of Vitality gets +2/+2 as long as you have 25 or more life. She's fine. It's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. I'll play that. I've played that before. That's a Windrake, I think. I'll pick it sort of high-ish mid-pack. If you're gaining a bunch of life, cool. You'll get to gain a tiny little bit more. And if this does become a 4/4, that's great. You know, at that point, you've got kind of a 1, maybe 2 mana discount on this. All in all, she's just fine. She's like a C+. You'll probably play the first copy, maybe even the second, because a Windrake is always fine, but it's not a slam dunk or an amazing first pick or anything. C+ for Angel of Vitality. Angelic Gift is up next. Angelic Gift is 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. When Angelic Gift enters the battlefield, draw a card. Enchanted creature has flying. Auras are back. Auras. The removal in this set is pretty darn good, so auras are really, really bad. You're going to get 2 for 1. This does draw you a card, so at least virtually card advantage-wise, you're at kind of the same, but you wasted a card for no reason. Flying is nice, but again, this just isn't good enough for me, and you're going to get 2 for 1. The removal in the set's good. We're going to see that. We're going to see pacifism. We're going to see murder. We're going to see good stuff. Don't play auras unless they basically say win the game, so D- for Angelic Gift. Apostle of Purifying Light is up next. Apostle of Purifying Light is 1 and a white for a creature human cleric. It's a 2/1 at uncommon. It's got protection from black. Now, protection is back. They took this away saying it's too complicated, we're never going to do it again. It's back, and it's a mechanic that I really like. Protection, the easiest way to remember, and it's written on the reminder text, is that it protects you from debt. Damage can't happen. It cannot be enchanted or equipped. It cannot be blocked. And it cannot be targeted by whatever it has protection from. It can still be destroyed by board wraths or things like that, but it protects you from debt. And you can pay 2 mana to exile target card from a graveyard. So what we're looking at in any matchup where your opponent's not playing black is a 2/1 for 2. That's pretty weak. That's kind of like a C-. You don't really want to play those cards. Maybe if you're hyper aggressive and you just want low drops, you can, but it's not great. The activated ability is basically meaningless. There's a couple of things that it could help you out with here, but it's super narrow. So basically, I would keep this in my sideboard whenever I can, but when suddenly I'm against an opponent and in game 1 I saw that they're playing black, this comes out of the board and it's going to be an infinite chump blocker or unblockable some amount of the time when all they have is black creatures. So a D+ for Apostle of Purifying Light. Up next is Battalion Foot Soldier. Battalion Foot Soldier is 2 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. It's a 2/2. When Battalion Foot Soldier enters the battlefield, you may search your library for any number of cards named Battalion Foot Soldier. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's Legion Conquistador that we saw just a couple years ago. Surprise! Ixalan was almost a couple of years ago, but with a less relevant, for this set anyways, creature type. It's okay, I wouldn't play 1. 2 is kind of 3 is okay. 4 or more and you get there. But remember, getting there is that your deck is jammed full of 2/2s. Now in Ixalan, this was okay because your deck was filled with 2/2s that were vampires, which means they did stuff. Here, this isn't going to do all that much, so I'm not really excited without that tribal synergy. So this is like a C-. I'm not really super excited by this, and I'm not looking to collect them all. C- for Battalion Foot Soldiers. Bishop of Wings is up next. Bishop of Wings is white for a creature human cleric at a rare. It's a 1/4. Whenever an angel enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. Whenever an angel you control dies, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. I don't really have much interest in this. It's a 1/4 for 2, and the 2 is white, so I'm not really excited by it. There's some angels, a couple at uncommon. You're not really going to be having a deck jammed full of angels with this card gaining you life left and right. 4 life gain tacked on those uncommon angels is nice, but yeah, I'm just not super sold on this. You're not always going to have this before you draw the angels. Late game, this is a horrible card. And then if the angel dies, you get a 1/1. There's too much going on here. It seems build-aroundy, but there's not really the support for it. I think it's just a janky sort of EDH plant. So I'm at like a D+ on Bishop of Wings. I'm not looking to play this. Brought Back is up next. Brought Back is white for an instant at rare. And it says choose up to 2 target permanent cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. Return them to the battlefield tapped. Not a huge fan of this because it's so reactive, situational. You need to have it in hand and have 2 white mana at exactly the time that your opponent removes something, preferably 2 things. You can, of course, try to orchestrate this in combat, maybe making some trades and then bringing those creatures back. But it's just very reactive, and it requires a lot to go right. And that's not how I like to play Magic. That's not how I like to build my decks. I want to make sure that I'm being proactive. I want to make sure that all of my cards in my deck do something. And this card, many turns, doesn't do anything. You literally legally cannot cast it. So I've got this at like a D. I just don't really want to play it, and I'm sure people are going to pick it way higher than I do, which means I'm literally never going to play it. D for Brought Back. Cavalier of Dawn is up next, the first in the Cavalier cycle. Cavalier of Dawn is 2 white for a creature elemental knight at Mythic. It's a 4/6 vigilance. When Cavalier of Dawn enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. When Cavalier of Dawn dies, return target artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. This isn't that great for a Mythic, like arguably one of the star mythics of the set, because there is a cycle of these. A 4/6 vigilance is big, sure, but you're paying 5 mana for it, and white means you're never splashing for this, and you need to be playing white in order for this to ever be a 5-drop. It has the Beast Within style removal, which is good. I played Incongruity a fair bit in Ravnica Allegiance. And that 3/3, assuming you kill an opponent's creature, isn't really going to be attacking into your 4/6. Hopefully. And yes, people will remind me all the time that you could upgrade one of your own creatures, but you're never happy doing that. You're never happy doing that. If you're playing this card in order to upgrade your 2/2 into a 3/3, you're not happy. And unlike Beast Within, you can't blow up one of your lands to make a 3/3. This is creature, not permanent. If this dies, you get back probably nothing. Pacifism's probably going to be the best hit, as we'll see pacifisms back in this format, which, by the way, is a huge sign that I think I'm going to love this format. But you're probably not getting anything great back except for maybe a pacifism. So this is ultimately all still fine, but I have it at like a B. It's not a slam dunk. This isn't instantly winning you the game. All the value is nice, but none of it is blow my mind. I have to play white because I have this card. Yeah, B for this. And remember, that casting cost is rough. You have to be playing white to be playing this. Not splashing white, not black with a little bit of white. You have to be white to play this card. Up next is Dawning Angel, the only common angel for that Bishop of Wings build around, I guess. Dawning Angel is 4 and a white for a creature Angelic common. She's a 3/2 flyer. When Dawning Angel enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. So of course, if you have the Bishop, you gain 8 life. You got there. 5 mana for a 3/2 flyer isn't something I'm super happy about. This does remind me of the what was it? Windgrace Acolyte, I think, from Dominaria. It was a 3/2 flyer for 5 that gained you 3 life. It also milled the top 3 cards of your library, which was sometimes relevant, but not entirely relevant. And Windgrace Acolyte was okay in that format. I don't know if this is also going to be okay or not, just because I think there are so many flyers, especially in blue-white. Blue-white flyers is the archetype that is supported this time around. And I don't know if this has a spot. I think this is probably a C. I'm not super excited to play this. I think if I'm playing blue-white flyers, I just want smaller ones. I just want smaller ones that I can cast for sure earlier, maybe cast 2 of them in a turn. So I'm not super stoked on Dawning Angel here. I have it at like a C. I don't think I'm going to go down to a C-, but yeah, I have it as a C. C for Dawning Angel. Up next is Daybreak Chaplain. Daybreak Chaplain is 1 and a white for a creature human cleric at common. She's a 1/3 with lifelink. We saw her in M19, and she's okay. In M19, there was a very supported black-white life gain deck. There is some life gain going on in here, and there are some sort of little payoffs, but it's not exactly a super supported archetype as far as I can see. So I don't think you're going to be going as deep on Daybreak Chaplain as you did there, and even there, you didn't really go that deep on them. They were sort of an include that you could put in, I guess. I'm going to keep her at a C-. It's not the end of the world if you play one, but I think you avoid playing it if you can. C- for Daybreak Chaplain. Up next is Devout Decree, another cycle. Devout Decree is 1 and a white for a sorcery at uncommon. Exile target creature or planeswalker that's black or red. Scry 1. This is what we call a color hoser, and we used to have these in core sets, basically every core set. The white one used to be Celestial Purge, which was instant speed but didn't scry. I think the instant speed is definitely better than just the scry, but still, this is a really cool card, and these are actually surprisingly good. Obviously, they are sideboard only, and while I'm not really talking about Arena here, because I think Best of 1 is an absolute travesty and arguably the worst way to ever play Magic ever, you can't play these in Best of 1 Arena. You absolutely cannot play these because you can't guarantee that you're going to play an opponent who's playing black or red, preferably both. But in Best of 3, the actual real way to draft and to play Magic in general, this card is fantastic because you put it in your sideboard and you play that blue-green opponent and you forget you have it. And then you play that black-green opponent and you side it in and you pay 2 mana to kill their like black 6-drop demon or whatever, and it feels great, and you scry 1 while doing it. So these cards are actually higher than you would think picks. They are not picks that you leave until the last pick or 2 of the pack. If you are white, the second you get a pack that has this and like a 2/2 for 2 or like a card that is fine, you take this card instead. It's going to be way, way, way better because it is premium removal in some number of your matchups. So I have this as a D+++. Because it is a ridiculously strong sideboard card, obviously in certain matches. Never play this in Best of 1. Better life advice, never play Best of 1. Up next we have Disenchant, more sideboard-only-ish cards. Disenchant is 1 and a white for an instant at common. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's naturalize, except it's in white. I'm pretty sure Disenchant came first. Yes, a quick check tells me that Alpha was earlier than 8th edition. Yeah, it's sideboard only, it's naturalized. You'll side this in if there's some scary enchantments or artifacts, which there are some. I would side this in against an opponent who has some pacifisms. There are a few artifacts that I really would like to kill for 2 mana. There, of course, as is usual for most sets, a lot of crappy artifacts as well. So not enough to actually put this in main deck, but out of the sideboard, it's like a D+. There's going to be matchups where this is just solid. Up next is Eternal Isolation. Eternal Isolation is 1 and a white for a sorcery at uncommon. Put target creature with power 4 or greater on the bottom of its owner's library. This seems fairly undercosted. Smite the Monstrous, which was this card except it destroyed it instead of putting it on the bottom, and was instant, sure. Cost double, it cost 4 mana. This costs 2 mana and typically does basically the same thing. The bottom of the deck may as well be dead, and in fact, if you're playing against somebody who has any sort of reanimation or return to hand stuff, it's even better. Now, in a lot of sets, I've never really enjoyed playing Smite the Monstrous in the main deck, just because you can't guarantee that you're always going to be playing against opponents who have creatures with power 4 or greater. Not everybody has that. Not everybody has the Nuts draft where they have nothing but 5/5s for 3 mana in their deck. So I like to keep this in my sideboard. If it turns out that a ton of people are constantly playing giant stompy things in this format, maybe it makes the main deck. But for me, I don't like putting a card that may not ever have a target in my deck. But out of the sideboard, it's like a D+. So D+ out of the sideboard. Lots of sideboard cards in this format, and that makes me excited. Up next is Fencing Ace. Fencing Ace is 1 and a white for a creature human soldier at uncommon. It's a 1/1 with double strike, and that's it. Never been a fan of Fencing Ace. We've seen this card at least once before. I believe it was originally in Return to Ravnica. And it's not great. Obviously, the dream is if you jam a bunch of auras on this, it's got double strike, and then it's going to be great, but then your opponent bounces it or pacifies it or murders it. I'm going to say this a lot, this set review. The removal in this set appears to be quite good. You're going to get 2 for 1 if your plan is to Voltron up something. So I have no interest in playing this card. I think I avoid playing it basically always. I honestly think it's just an F. I'm never touching Fencing Ace. F for Fencing Ace. Gauntlets of Light is up next. Gauntlets of Light is 2 and a white for another enchantment aura. At uncommon, enchanted creature gets +0/+2 and assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Enchanted creature has 2 white. Untap this creature. So it's basically a +2/+2 aura. Obviously, it might make your 2/4 way more effective than if it was just +2/+2, but it's kind of like +2/+2 for 3 mana, and I also get to untap the creature if I want to put more mana into it. Again, just like Angelic Gift, you're really opening yourself up for a 2 for 1 here. You don't even get to draw a card like you do with Angelic Gift, so I'm just going to avoid playing this as well. Don't play auras in sets where removal is really good, and I think the removal is actually pretty darn good in this set. So I've got this at like a D. Realistically, I want to put it at an F, but I don't want people to yell at me. So D for Gauntlets of Light. Glaring Aegis is up next. Glaring Aegis is a single white mana for an enchantment aura. At common, enchant creature. When Glaring Aegis enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. Enchanted creature gets +1/+3. So it's an aura. It's bad. No. Actually, this one's a little bit different. This one's slightly better. It's not better by much, but I'd actually maybe play one of these sometimes because this one actually does something to my opponent. This isn't just +1/+3. This is +1/+3 and tap a creature. That can actually create a lethal situation. That can create a situation where you get a bunch more damage in. That can buy you some time. +1/+3 is actually pretty darn big. That's 4 numbers of power and toughness, 4 total, for a single white mana. This isn't great. You're not first picking this. You shouldn't be 5th, 6th, or 7th picking this. You shouldn't be playing this all of the time, but it's not an awful card like I think Angelic Gift is or Gauntlets of Light is. I have this at a C-. I'm still generally not going to play it if I don't have to, but it is a little bit better because it does something. The other ones don't do anything. So C- for Glaring Aegis. Up next is a card I'm super excited about. It's not that exciting, but I'm excited about it. God's Willing. God's Willing is a single white mana for an instant. Target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Scry 1, and it's an uncommon from Theros originally. This card is super good. In fact, It's been rarity shifted up. It's always been a common in every format that it's been. Here, it's an uncommon. This is such a good combat trick and removal insurance. There's a ton going on here. It's super versatile. You have that ability to say no to removal. This is a counter spell for a single white mana. You have a chance to save a creature in combat for a single white mana. You have a chance to remove an aura. If your opponent has a pacifism on your creature, you cast this on your creature, giving it protection from white, and the pacifism falls off. And of course, if you've got a creature that needs to get in for some lethal damage, and your opponent has a bunch of blue creatures, give it pro blue, and now it's unblockable. This 1 mana card does so much, plus you get to scry 1. Absolutely happy to see this here. Really makes me think that I'm really going to enjoy this draft format, and it's still just a trick, but it is a very versatile one, so it's a strong C+ for me. I would play at least 2 of these if I could in every single white deck I play. C+ for God's willing. Core set mainstay Griffin Protector and its friend Griffin Sentinel are back. Griffin Protector is 3 and a white for a creature Griffin at common. It's a 2/3 flyer, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Griffin Protector gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So this attacks hopefully as a 3/4, maybe sometimes as a 4/5, but don't get ahead of yourself there. Griffin Protector is always fine. It's a 2/3 flyer for 4, which is okay. It's not as exciting as like a 2/2 for 3, but it's fine. And as I said, it's going to attack as a 3/4 an amount of the time. It's going to block your opponent's flyers to an extent. It's just an all-around fine card. I've got it at a C+. It's not a slam dunk, but I probably play the first one always. So C+ for Griffin Protector. Griffin Sentinel is 2 and a white for a creature Griffin at common. It's a 1/3 flyer with Vigilance. It's okay. It's not quite as good as the Griffin Protector, but it is a 1/3 flyer with Vigilance, which means that it attacks for 1, big whoop, but it doesn't tap, which means it can block, and it can block all of those 1 power and 2 power creatures pretty decently, keep the X1s at bay. It's a fine card. It's not a C+ like Griffin Protector is, but it's a solid C. I'll play the first one if I have a spot, but I'm also not gonna go crazy trying to get it into my deck. Now, if you are the blue-white flyers deck and this thing can get bigger, perhaps the blue-white uncommon that we'll see in a few days, then you're probably a little bit more likely to play it. But as is, a C for Griffin Sentinel. Up next is Hanged Executioner. Hanged Executioner is 2 and a white for a creature spirit at rare. It's a 1/1 flyer. When Hanged Executioner enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Pay 3 and a white, exile Hanged Executioner. Exile target creature. This seems fantastic. It's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer, which is fine. That's always fine. It's Windrake, as we've talked about. I should actually check that to make sure that's correct, but oh well. And then if you really need it, you can kill a creature with it and still have a 1/1 flyer left behind. Seems like a solid, sort of not exactly bomby first pick. So I'm at a B+ on this. It's just going to be really, really decent. Now remember, it's going to be an onboard trick unless you're paying, I guess, 5 white for this to play it and exile it right away. So your opponent might sandbag their creatures, but if this comes down late in the game, it's probably just going to take down one of their very real threats. So I like this at a B+. I'll first pick this. It's not going to be an oops, I win bomb, but up next we've got another angel, Herald of the Sun. Herald of the Sun is 4 white for a creature angel at uncommon. She's a 4/4 flyer. Pay 3 and a white. Put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature with flying. If you don't have a ton of other flyers, then this is sort of like C-, C-ish filler range. It's a big flyer, but it's costly. If you do have other flyers, and boy is there a flyers deck in this format, this thing looks a fair bit better. But if you have a bunch of flyers out, you're probably already winning. Pumping 4 mana a counter in probably isn't going to somehow magically break the game wide open. The fact that this is a 4/4 flyer is in fact probably going to do a lot more than those counters will. So all in all, I don't think I'm going above a C+ on this. Even in the Flyers deck, I think it's still just a C+. And if you aren't in that Flyers deck, if you've only got a few, this drops into absolute filler range that you might want to look at cutting. So C+ in the right deck, not going to go any higher for Herald of the Sun. Up next is Inspiring Charge. Inspiring Charge is 2 white for an instant at common, and it says creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. It's fine if you're going to go wide, and if you are confident you're going to go wide. It doesn't look like it's quite as supported as it was in red-white in M19, but of course going wide is basically always a strategy you can try out, and this is a way to do it. There's been much better versions of this card. I think Trumpet Blast is a better card because it's cheaper. Yes, this one can be used on the defense, but if you're using this on the defense, you've lost the game. You've lost way more games than you'll win by using this defensively. But if you're confident you can go wide, go ahead and play this card, but unless you are absolutely 100% sure you're going to do that, I don't think you really played Inspired Charge too much in this format. So this really varies from like an F to a C+, completely depending on your deck. Up next is Inspiring Captain. Inspiring Captain is 3 and a white for a creature human knight. It's a 3/3 at common. When Inspiring Captain enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Feels like we've seen this sort of card a lot lately. I'm thinking of the Elephant from War of the Spark, and I feel like there was more. This specific card was from Shadows over Innistrad originally, and it's fine enough in a go wide deck, but there's kind of only one situation where this card's really good, which is you've gone wide, you have a pretty good attack, you play this, and you add some extra points of damage to your attack, hopefully for lethal. If you're in a board stall, maybe it helps break it, but the numbers kind of have to be perfectly aligned. If you're behind, it doesn't do anything. If you don't have a good board, it doesn't do anything. So ultimately, this is a hill giant a little bit too much of the time, so I have it at like a C-. Obviously, if you are definitely gonna be wide, if you are confident you're gonna be wide, it goes up a little bit, and you're a little bit more comfortable playing one of these. So C- for Inspiring Captain. Up next is yet another cycle, a reprint cycle, Leyline of Sanctity. Leyline of Sanctity is 2 white for an enchantment at rare. If Leyline of Sanctity is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. So you draw your 7, you see this card in your hand, you pop it on the battlefield. It means you only have 6 cards in your hand, but hey, you played a 4-drop for free. You have hexproof. Meh. This card is obviously way more relevant in Constructed, which people are very happy to see this reprint since it was gaining in value, but this is just not a card you play in Limited. There's just not enough that targets you in Limited for you to actually justify playing this. You should never pick it beyond value. It's just an F. You never, ever want to be paying 4 mana for this, and even if you cheat it out at the start of the game, it's still just not gonna be very relevant. Giving yourself hexproof? It's not worth anything. F for Leyline of Sanctity. Loxodon Life Chanter is up next. Loxodon Life Chanter is 5 and a white for a creature elephant cleric at rare. It's a 4/6. When Loxodon Life Chanter enters the battlefield, you may have your life total become the total toughness of creatures you control. Pay 5 and a white, Loxodon Life Chanter gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is your life total. I think the cost for this is just a bit too detrimental. A 6 mana 4/6 is not my jam, and then if having my life total become the total toughness is great, then I feel like I'm probably doing okay already. Maybe I'm in a bit of a big butt, low power board stall or something, and it's a huge amount of life, but a huge amount of life in a board stall doesn't really do anything. Then for 6 mana a turn, you can make this thing maybe gigantic, but there's no trample or anything, which means it does get chumped forever until your opponent finds an answer. I think this is a good example of one of these cards that I'm probably just never going to play because other people are going to value it a bit too highly, and I'm just never going to have the chance to play with it. As is, I think it's way too costly for what it does. I have it at like a C+. I think you can play it, and some games may be able to be relevant, but I think there's way too much cost put into this, and a little bit of situationality for it to really be that good. So I've got a C+ for Loxodon Life Chanter. Loyal Pegasus is up next. Loyal Pegasus is a single white mana for a creature Pegasus at uncommon. It's a 2/1 flyer. Loyal Pegasus can't attack or block alone. Loyal Pegasus works really well in aggro decks. We've seen this card before. Coming down on 1 and then attacking in, generally unblockable for 2 damage on turn 3. It's pretty solid. That being said, you really need to be all in aggro, and these actually are a lot better in multiples, because if you can play one of these on 1, and then boy, if you can live the dream and play 2 of these on turn 2, then you're attacking in for a lot of probably unblockable damage, but that is very Christmas landy. It's kind of a pickup a little bit later in the pack when you know you're going to be aggro, when you know you're going to be playing 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops. It's not something you go really highly in on, but they do get better in multiples, as I said. So it's sort of like a C+ in those aggro heavy decks. And if it's not an aggro heavy deck, if your curve's a bit higher, if you're not planning on doing a ton of damage real fast, it's more of a D and maybe not even playable. So C+ in the right deck, D in the others. Master Splicer is up next, a reprint from New Phyrexia. 3 and a white for a 1/1 creature human artificer at uncommon. When Master Splicer enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. Golems you control get +1/+1. This is a 5/5 for 4. 5/5 for 4. Now, of course, if they kill the 1/1, you're left with a 3/3 for 4, which is a Hill Giant, which, as we know, is you'll play it if you have to. But until they remove the 1/1, you got a whole bunch of power. And there are some other golems in the set, technically, but not really. This isn't New Phyrexia, where there was a Splicer in every color, and I think there were like rare Splicers as well, where golems were really running around. This is going to be less good than that, but it's still totally solid, because again, if they don't deal with the 1/1, and do they really want to spend removal on a 1/1? You're going to have a 4/4 running around for only 4 mana. So I really like Master Splicer. I think it's a very solid card. I think it's like a I don't think it's a B-. Again, if there was a lot of golems running around in the set, it would be a B-, but there aren't. So I'm just going to go with a C+, but a relatively strong C+ on Master Splicer. Moment of Heroism is up next. Moment of Heroism is 1 and a white for an instant at common. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink until end of turn. This was one of my favorite combat tricks for a while, but I think it's been heavily replaced by first strike combat tricks. +2/+2 for 2 mana is fine. It's obviously not giant growth, but it's okay. But that lifelink can actually be a very big swing. Not only do you save your creature in combat, killing their creature, hopefully, you also get a pretty big life swing. So Moment of Heroism is actually a very, very playable combat trick. It's not huge. It's not an absolutely insanely high pick, but I'm pretty happy with a C on this. I don't think I'd quite go up to C+. That's really saved for the first strike combat tricks these days. So a solid C for Moment of Heroism, and I'm glad to see it back. Also, this art took me literal years to actually understand what was going on. Moorland Inquisitor, also from the original Innistrad block, is back. Moorland Inquisitor is 1 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. It's a 2/2. You can pay 2 and a white, and Moorland Inquisitor gains first strike until end of turn. This card was okay in Avacyn Restored. Now, Avacyn Restored was a very weak set, and this card was actually really good there, but that's a weird thing that happened with that awful set that I never want to play again. Yeah, Moorland Inquisitor is fine because it's bear, right? It's a 2/2 for 2. It's fine. And then, if you have the mana kicking around, and if it's relevant, you can give it first strike, which means it can attack a little bit better. It can actually block terrifyingly well. If your opponent has X2s, they are not attacking in as long as you have this and mana up. The threat of activation is huge, and then maybe they just don't attack and you cast something like Raise the Alarm, which we'll see in a little bit. Yeah, this is a fine card. I'm pretty happy saying this is a C+. I hope it still is. I hope that it hasn't been left behind in the power creep of Magic, but I'm going to go with a C+ on Moorland Inquisitor. I'll always play the first one, I'm pretty sure, until I learn differently. C+ for Moorland Inquisitor. Up next, it's back. Pacifism. 1 and a white for an enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. Absolutely premium first pickable removal. Yes, if you cast this on something that has an activated ability, it can still activate the ability, or a static ability. The static ability is still in effect. So do keep that in mind, but using this on threats is great. This is a fantastic card, and I don't know if there's ever been a set with this card in it that I've hated. A quick check there tells me that no. Outside of the, 7th edition, 8th edition core sets, which were intentionally bad draft formats, there has never been a draft format that I've hated where pacifism's in. This card is fantastic. This card should be in every core set. This, along with God's Willing, along with the sideboard color hosers, along with a lot of stuff, has me very, very excited for this format. I don't think it's going to be an all-star amazing format. It's not going to be one you remember forever, but I think it's going to be really, really, really good drafting, as a core set should be. Pacifism's an A. There's not much else to say about pacifism. It's a straight A. You will first pick this in a lot of packs unless there is a straight up game-winning bomb in the pack. Solid A for pacifism. Planar Cleansing is up next. Planar Cleansing is 3 white for a sorcery at rare. Destroy all non-land permanents, not even creatures, just all permanents. I'm not the biggest fan of Wraths. I want them to be one-sided. I want them to have some sort of an effect. Kaya's Wrath was pretty good getting life. This just doesn't do anything other than wipe the board clean for a ludicrous amount of mana plus triple white. Not super sold on this. I'm just never going to pick this highly enough. Everybody else is going to pick it, so I'm never going to play it. For me, it's like a D+. Realistically, for some people, it's going to be like a C. People are going to remember those times where it worked super well, and they're going to forget the times where they died with this in their hand. So I've got this at a D+. I'm just not a big fan of Wraths, and this one doesn't do it for me at all. Raise the Alarm is up next. Raise the Alarm is 1 and a white for an instant at common. Create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. Raise the Alarm is always okay. Instant speed is what really makes this card. It's a flash 2/2. It's a 1/1 that can eat an X1 plus have a 1/1 that sticks around. Surprise double block or triple block with other creatures, or even just something to do at the end of your turn with that extra mana that you had laying around. This is all totally okay. It's nowhere above a C, but it's just totally okay. Play Raise the Alarm if you got a spot. If you don't, it's not the worst thing, and don't pick it too highly. C for Raise the Alarm. Up next is Rule of Law. Rule of Law is 2 and a white for an enchantment at uncommon. Each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. 0 interest. You're handicapping yourself in an attempt to hurt your opponent, except double spelling and limited, while great, and often what brings somebody ahead, isn't super common, and you're spending probably a turn plus a card to do this. You can't afford that. You can't afford the turn. You can't afford the mana. You can't afford the card slot. If you're new to these set reviews, if you're new to Limited in general, the most expensive thing is that card slot that it takes up in your deck. You only get 23-ish, and this should never be one of your 23. A solid F for Rule of Law. Sephara Sky's Blade is up next. Sephara is 4 white. There's a lot of triple color in this set, you'll see. Legendary creature Angel at rare. She's a 7/7. You may pay white and tap 4 untapped creatures you control with flying, rather than pay this spell's mana cost. She has flying, lifelink, and other creatures you control with flying have indestructible. If you're in the Flyers deck, this thing is obviously an insane bomb, but you need to be Flyers, like minimum 9 creatures with flying. Even then, some quick math, using hypogeometric calculators, suggests that in order to have a 50% chance of having drawn those 4 Flyers and Sephara, you gotta make it to turn 11 to have a 50% chance of having drawn correctly. If literally all of your creatures fly in like a 15-16-ish creature deck, you have a 50% chance of having drawn 4 Flyers and Sephara by turn 5. So even in perfect conditions, you're only at 50% to actually cast her on turn 5. After having done all these odds, they're actually pretty low odds, so casting her super early by tapping your Flyers, I think is a little bit questionable. I don't think you're actually going to pull that off super often in Limited, or if you are, it's going to be really late in the game, and it's going to be great, and it's going to win the game for sure. On the board, she is absolutely insane. I'm just wondering if it's going to be super easy to get her on the board. Now, I'm still first picking her and building around her if I see her. I'm going to take all those Loyal Pegasuses. I'm going to take every single card that ever says flying on it and see if I can do it. And just try to make it to turn 7 and cast her for 7 mana, because she's still going to be pretty solid there. So I think she is, despite all of what I just said and all the odds that I just said, I think she's still an A. I might actually go down to A-, because that casting cost is pretty restrictive. Don't get too hyped up that you're going to be casting her for cheap constantly. It's going to be actually very rare that you pull that off. So A- for Sephara Sky's Blade. If you are super not in Flyers, maybe don't play her. She's too expensive otherwise. Up next is Soulmender, back from M14 and M15. Soulmender is a single white mana for a 1/1 creature human cleric. Tap it, you gain yourself a life. There's not really a life payoff in this set. There's that life chanter, which is kind of cute, I guess. And there's the angel that gets +2/+2 as long as you have enough life, and a Johnny, but we're not building around a mythic. There's no real life gain plan in this set, so I'm not super sold on Life Mender or Soul Mender being terribly relevant here. It can be a little bit annoying, just you drop it on 1 and you're always gaining a life. You're always basically preventing 1 damage a turn, sort of. But it's just not how I really like to play, so I'm pretty out on it. I've got it like a D. I'm not looking to play this in basically any set, I think. Who knows? Maybe Life Chanter is going to be shockingly amazing and you're going to want to build around it, but I doubt it. So a D for Soul Mender. Up next is Squad Captain. Squad Captain is 4 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. She's a 2/2 with Vigilance, and Squad Captain enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other creature you control. Obviously, she's unplayable as a 2/2. You are never paying 5 mana for a 2/2. Pretty unplayable as a 3/3. As a 4/4, it's okay. A 5/5, I finally got what I paid for. Note, it does say other, so she doesn't count herself, so she would be a 2/2 by herself, not a 3/3. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too variable for my taste. If you're confident that you're definitely going wide, then she's maybe an okay include. But if you are ever paying 5 mana for this and she's a 2/2 or a 3/3 or even a 4/4, I think you've really overpaid. So I've got her at like a C-. I'm just not really looking to play her unless the stars really align. Up next is Starfield Mystic. Starfield Mystic is 1 and a white for a creature human cleric. At rare, it's a 2/2. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 mana less to cast. Whenever an enchantment you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Starfield Mystic. This feels, again, like jank build-around kind of stuff for Commander, not really for Limited. It's a 2/2 for 2, so, it's not awful. You could play this if you had to. Your enchantment spells costing 1 less to cast is okay. A pacifism for 1 is better than a pacifism for 2, but you're probably not going to be playing a ton of enchantments in any Limited decks in this format. And whenever an enchantment you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, which probably isn't something that's going to happen too often, you get a counter on your 2/2. None of this really works. This is definitely for Commander or some sort of constructed plant. It's not for Limited. It's a bear, so it's going to be a C at least, I think. And if you have a couple of pacifisms, it's still a C. It's never really going up to a C+ here. So C for Starfield Mystic. And our final card for the day is Steadfast Sentry. Steadfast Sentry is 2 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. It's a 3/2 with Vigilance. When Steadfast Sentry dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Seems fine. It's probably just above filler C level. It's probably just a C+. It's a 3/2 for 3, which is fine. I prefer that over a 2/3. It's got Vigilance. That's cool, and we're not paying any extra at all for that. And when it dies, which it probably will, it's only got 2 toughness, it gets to put a counter on another creature. This is just totally fine, and I think you'll actually play multiples of these and be relatively happy, but it's not a high pick. It's very, very, very middle of the pack pick, but I think it is a relatively strong C+ for Steadfast Sentry. Our actual final card, I thought there were 40 cards in every color, but there's 41, is Yoked Ox from Theros. Yoked Ox is a single white mana for an 0/4. That's it. Yoked Ox is not a card you ever really want to play in the main board. What you do with a Yoked Ox is you pick it last pick, preferably, or pretty darn close to last pick. And then, when you discover that your opponent is faster than you can side it in, and it's going to block your opponent for a fair bit of time, assuming they're not flyers, at least. That's about where it is. It's a D. It's not exciting. You are never, ever picking this highly. Like I said, there are sideboard cards you should pick highly, like the Color Hosers, like Devout Decree. But this card, pick it as low as you can. Never main deck it, unless you yourself are absolutely super controlling. But that's more of a blue-black thing. White doesn't tend to do that. That being said, though, you could maybe play this in a blue-white Flyers deck, as it just sort of protects the ground, but I think I'd rather just play another Flyer. I'd rather play Removal. I'd rather play probably just anything. I think you do just keep this in the sideboard unless you find out that you need some early blocks. So a D for Yoked Ox. So that's going to wrap it up for White. As I mentioned a couple of times, I'm super excited for this set. It reminds me very strongly of M13, to a lesser extent M14, which was not as good as M13, but M13 was an amazingly good set to draft. It's not flashy, it's not showy, but it is good. It's good, solid drafting. The color hosers, the cheap removal, the premium removal, the planeswalkers and the mythics that aren't insanely overpowered. I'm excited for this set. I think I might actually have a whole lot of draft life with this set. So let me know what cards you're excited to play with in white, what cards you agree with, disagree with, etc. in the comments down below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me over on Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. Next Monday, July 1st, Canada Day, I will be streaming M20 draft and sealed on Arena. Wizards of the Coast has invited me to an early access streamer event, so make sure you check that out. I'll be over there most of the day. And yeah, if you like the content, click that thumbs up button, click subscribe if you want to see more, share this around, etc. And I'll see you all tomorrow for the blue set review.